these truths to be self-evident.
That all men are created equal.
As a member of Congress, I get to have a lot of really interesting people in the office, experts on what they're talking about.
This is the podcast
For insights into the issues.
China, bioterrorism, Medicare for all, in-depth discussions.
Breaking it down into simple terms. We hold
these truths.
We hold these truths.
with Dan Crenshaw.
The Eagle has landed.
Hey everyone, returning to Hold These Truths. We have former Dallas Mavericks owner and Shark Tank investor, Mark Cuban. Since we last spoke to Mark, he's been doing some interesting work outside of sports or television or some of his usual investments. This time, it's on healthcare, specifically drugs. He's focusing on the business model that has traditionally paid for our drugs, because I know that's what really makes everybody mad, how we actually pay for our healthcare. And he's going to turn it all on its head with his new decision to enter the drug business. So I want to understand today what his model is, because drug pricing continues to be one of the most important issues for voters, for Americans, for everybody. There's other options out there that have actually been implemented, unfortunately, such as price controls for Medicare, forced negotiations. We'll get into what that exactly means. We've talked about it before on this podcast. And the problems associated with that, specifically that it has a tendency to hamper innovation. And you'll never know what you didn't create. What Mark is doing is different. It's a market competition principle. And so we're going to talk about it for legal disclosure. I'm not endorsing any company here. We're just talking about it, mostly talking about the drug industry and how drugs are actually priced. So Mark, thanks for being on. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Dan.
All right. And I appreciate your willingness to talk to me about United Airlines too, as we get through this, but we'll get to that. But let's as promised, I got to tease the audience because the United stuff is really good, and we were talking before we started recording about just why big companies make the dumb decisions they do when it comes to PR, and I really think United, you didn't have to go to war with me, but I'm teasing the audience. We're going to talk about that later. How did you get interested in healthcare? Like what was this? What's the jump?
Great question. So in 2017, when the Trump administration was talking about getting rid of the ACA, I was talking to friends and it was like, well, what are they going to replace it with? So I said, okay, let me just start digging in because I'm curious what the alternatives are. And I just wanted to learn more because I just didn't know much about it. So I did. I just took a deep dive, and over the following years, I got into it more and more and more and kind of became a healthcare nerd, went to different conferences just to educate myself. Just because like everybody else, I thought it needed changing. And then right around this little bit later, like 2019, I got a cold email from a Dr. Alex Oshmayansky, and he was pitching me about creating something called a compounding pharmacy in Denver for generic drugs that were in short supply. What a compounding pharmacy does is they actually make the actual medications on site, but they can only do it in small volumes. And so I was like, that's thinking too small. And this was not long after the Farmer Bro stuff came out. And I just asked him a question. I'm like, if this dude, Martin Shkreli, can buy up the rights to this drug arePRM and just raise the prices like that, this is not an efficient market. What's going on here? And so we started having conversations and going back and forth. And it became really obvious to me the missing link was transparency. When, think about what happens when you get a medication prescribed. You don't discuss cost, alternatives. They just ask you what pharmacy you want this sent to, right? And then you go to the pharmacy, and depending on your circumstances, you may be terrified. You might not be able to hit your copay. You might not be able to hit your deductible. You might not be able to hit whatever out-of-pocket expenses. We've all heard stories of seeing somebody in the pharmacy line not able to pay the drugs. So I started digging into it, and I was like, okay, let's create this company called costplusdrugs.com. First thing, we go out and get the URL, Cost Plus Drugs. It's theirs. And then what we decided to do to differentiate it, unlike anybody else in the industry, we were going to show you our cost. So when you go to costplusdrugs.com, put in the name of the medication. If it's one of the 2,450 that we carry, and growing, then you'll see our costs. So it might be Tadalafil, something my buddies buy a whole lot of, which is generic Cialis. And so it'll show you our cost. And then we decided to be transparent on our markup. So it'll show that we mark it up 15%. on every single one of our medications. It's always 15%. Then, because we're mail order for part of our business, we show you that there's a pharmacy fee of $5 and a shipping and handling fee of $5. And so then you put in the number you need, is it 30, 60, 90, 180 days, whatever it may be. And we show you, we give you information on what to tell the doctor to do, where to sell the prescription. And that's it. You sign up and, 7 days later, your medication shows up. It's that simple. And what really made it transformative and disruptive is that you can look up the price in advance. You don't have to guess, because so many people, particularly if you're uninsured or underinsured, like I said, you walk in and if you're a cash pay, that same drug that we may be charging $15 for can be $150 or $1,500 or $15,000. And you don't know that till you go to the pharmacy. And the crazier part is too, the pharmacist doesn't even know until they put in the prescription. Yeah. So it's insane. And so just doing that has led to some other second order benefits as well.
So is Cost Plus Drugs technically a pharmacy? It's like an online pharmacy? Or is it
Actually,
a manufacturer?
we're a little bit of all the above, right? We're licensed to be a pharmacy, but we use third-party companies to be our pharmacy just because of scale, right? We couldn't build a pharmacy fast enough to deal with the volume. I mean, we literally launched January 19th of 2022, almost, 25 months ago, and we're closing in on millions of customers. I don't even know how many prescriptions. We're setting records almost weekly. So we couldn't do the scale that was required. So we front end other pharmacies.
Okay. And so let's try and compare that then, what you just described, to what people normally encounter in the healthcare system. So, for most generic drugs, especially these, like the small molecule drugs, which mean pills, like your basic pills and things, 90% of
Right.
drugs.
Yeah, just pills.
And you guys are doing all generic, or is that not, or do you also do
Well, we're
branding?
doing generic and brand too. Yeah, we're doing brand, but it's growing because it's hard for just the legal aspects for the brand, but we're growing that side of it.
And do you take insurance? How does that work? Because like if I go to my pharmacy to get my medication, like I don't know what it costs, right? It costs very little because my insurance pays for it, so I'm paying like $1, but for the stuff I'm taking, right?
Right.
But some stuff could be way different, and you just never know.
Right. So it depends on who your insurer is, right? And that's where the whole problem comes in. There are effectively 3 big insurance companies that dominate the industry, and they have captive PBMs for the most part, pharmacy benefit managers. And that's where all the problems start, because there is absolutely no transparency. And so like we saw what Bernie Sanders did yesterday in trying to get the manufacturers to take culpability for the pricing, but that's really not how it works. The way it works is the decision we make for our insurance, first and foremost, defines the lack of transparency and the lack of certainty that we have for our costs, not just for our pharmacy, but for all of our healthcare. And the reality is those companies, they make more money because it's opaque. And that's a feature, not a bug to them.
Yeah, if I can find somebody, maybe you're that guy who can explain to the public what PBMs are in a way that makes sense. You'll be the first. I've been studying this forever,
Well,
and
let's try.
I have trouble. I have trouble explaining it. So ideally, a PBM is a pharmacy benefit manager. They're buying wholesale from a manufacturer. So
before we go to the PBMs, let's go back to the insurance company. Okay. So for most people, most insurance is through an employer. So the CEO and the HR and the CFO of the company make a decision on what insurance program they're going to use for their employees. And they make 2 decisions up front. Are we going to buy traditional insurance, or are we going to self-insure? Right? With self-insurance, meaning that the company pays out of pocket for all the expenses, and traditional, and which is typically for the smallest companies, 100 and fewer employees, they pay a premium per month. And then the insurance company is responsible for paying the expenses once the deductible is hit. And so when you make that insurance decision, that insurance company almost always also defines what PBM you're using. So on the healthcare side, the insurance company decides what network you're in, who's in network, who's out of network, and all those hassles. And on the drug side, they decide to define which pharmacy benefit manager you're going to use.
Right.
And that pharmacy benefit manager, their initial role was to say, look, we're the experts in what drugs should or should not be used, right? That's called the formulary. We think these are healthy drugs and these you really don't need, right? And then we're also the experts in negotiating prices with the manufacturers. So because we're able to aggregate all this volume from all these insurance companies that we work with, then we can get you better prices. 20 years ago, it worked like a champ, right? But what happened is you start getting consolidation in the industry. So now the big insurance companies, for the most part, own the big PBMs or vice versa. The PBMs have gotten so big, they have bought insurance companies.
Right.
And by
All
putting
integrated.
those two things together, it's made it more opaque. And healthcare costs now have become kind of an arbitrage where these big companies that control 80% of the market are responsible for setting all prices. 100, let's say 90%, 100% on generics until we came in, and 90% on brands, with the 10% on brands being some drugs are just so popular, the manufacturers, like the new weight loss drugs, the manufacturers can say, we don't care if you put us on their formulary or not. We have so much demand, you have to put us on your formulary, right? You can't survive. You're going to lose patients. You're going to lose customers. So that's effectively how it works. And so with that in mind, the PBMs are now, they've taken such control of it. They don't want, not only do they not want transparency, they want to be able to pull as much out of the pricing of the drug as they can and put in their own pocket. And so they'll go to a manufacturer of a medication, a brand medication, say Eliquis. I'm just picking one out of left field. And let's just say the retail price is $600 for Eliquis per month. Then they'll say, all right, Crenshaw Squibb, I think is the company. I'm going to pay you $600, but you're going to give me back $400 in a rebate. And then supposedly I'm going to pass on most, if not all of that rebate to the companies that buy healthcare from my associated insurance company. Right. But they don't fully pass that through to the companies. And the big issue is, why are they using rebates instead of net pricing? So the question becomes, why don't the PBMs, rather than using rebates, just say, okay, Eliquis shouldn't be at $600 retail. The net price that we pay to Bristol Myers Squibb is $200. Why don't we just mark that up a little bit to make a profit and just show that's the price we pay?
That would be what
It
you
makes
think
total
they would
sense,
do.
right? Right. Except that by doing that, then they can't change rebates. They can't push up the retail price to game the system. They can't game the system versus Medicare pricing, or more importantly, Medicaid pricing, because if they did that, that would be transparent and everybody would know what the pricing is. And when costplusdrugs.com came along, by publishing all of our prices, like we'll send a price list of everything we have to anybody who wants it. We saw Harvard and Vanderbilt and all these other organizations for the first time ever able to compare the pricing of the drugs we sell to the price that CMS pays to the PBMs. So and they were stuck publishing reports saying, if only we bought these 9 drugs from Cost Plus Drugs, the taxpayers would save $3.6 billion or $2.3 billion, whatever it was, depending on the drugs.
Do you have like an example of a drug
crazy money.
specifically that like you could tell us about that was like, whoa, what a revelation. Like this is actually what it
Sure.
costs. And yeah, like was there any examples?
Oh yeah, there's so many. Yeah. So there's one called droxidopa. It's what they call specialty drugs, which is a whole nother scam. But a friend of mine emailed me. He had lost his insurance. And when he called the local pharmacy, they told him a 90-day supply of this drug was going to be $10,000. He emails me. I'm like, let me check. Because this is right when we were getting started. We didn't carry it yet. So we checked, we got it, right? We're able to get it to them for $54 a month.
What?
And our price has since come down further. Yeah.
So
It's insane. There's another
and
drug.
why is your price $54? Because you just go directly to the manufacturer and you're like, I want to buy your drug.
We go direct. Yeah. Yeah. We go direct to the manufacturer, and then we only mark it up 15%. Whereas the
Right.
big PBMs, or in some cases, they're the pharmacies even that they own, because they own CVS and some of the big chains, not Walgreens. But they say, well, this person doesn't know what it really costs. If I can get away with $10,000, why wouldn't I? Right. And
Yeah.
there's so many other drugs, like imatinib, which is a chemotherapy drug. When we first got in business, well, even today, if you walk into a pharmacy and you need this chemotherapy drug, imatinib, and there's a chance they'll charge you $2,000, and you can get, depending on the strength, the same thing from us for $21.
It's crazy.
Now, those pharmacies, those pharmacies have started to react to us now, right? The PBMs, and they're saying, look, because our prices are public, their prices are starting to come down too. So there's still a lot of deltas, big deltas, but not quite as big. But here's the crazy part, Dan, right? You talked about single molecule drugs, pills, right? Well, a lot of the PBMs like to call these single molecule drugs, the more expensive ones, specialty drugs. What makes them special? They're more expensive. What makes them unique? Nothing. They're just more expensive. But by calling them specialty, they put in the contracts that they have with your employers that, one, you can't disclose the pricing that we're dictating. And basically every contract in healthcare says it has a non-disclosure, so you can't disclose it. But two, you have to use our pharmacy. You can't just take it into your local community pharmacy who will tell you this is an insane price. Here's what you could do with Cost Plus Drugs or with us, right? And so they scare people by calling them specialty drugs when there's nothing special about them other than the fact that they use it as an excuse to force them into their own pharmacies and charge 15, 20, 100 times the price that we would charge.
So, I mean, it's interesting. It help explain to people kind of the differences in the types of drugs. There's biologics, and then there's a small molecule, and the biologics are the really, the really tough ones. I mean, the interesting ones,
complex one.
And but there are still generics
But there's
that
also
eventually come.
biosimilars too, right?
Right, and that's what I was getting to. Yeah, so you
And
get
now
to the
there's
biosimilars,
right? Yeah. And it's crazy. It's even crazier, right? So you know what Humira is, right? You've heard of Humira, right? It's the number one revenue generating drug on the planet. And it goes before rebates about $8,800 per month for a patient, right?
Wow.
And that's what they'll charge prior to rebates to your insurance company or to your insurance company, which then in turn charges it to your company, your employer, right?
Right.
Now they have biosimilars that can either be exactly the same or effectively the same, meaning they're not made of the exact same ingredients, but they have pretty much the same impact.
Right.
And your doctor can always tell you the difference.
So the patent on
difference is the
Humira
price.
has expired, right? So I mean, because that's the
No, it
thing.
hasn't
It's like,
even,
oh, it hasn't, but
Yeah.
but you can still make a
No,
biosimilar.
I forget the exact laws there, but but they still can sell Humira, and then they restrict the PBMs. The big three PBMs don't want to sell anything but Humira or a biosimilar they made themselves. So what Cost Plus Drugs did, we partnered with a company called Coherus, who has a Humira biosimilar called Usimri. So Humira, $8,800 a month, give or take. Usimri, a biosimilar for Humira, $594 per month plus shipping and handling. The problem is, so the question is, why doesn't everybody just switch? The problem is the manufacturers of Humira, the PBMs that get this money from Humira don't want anybody to switch because they make a lot more money on an $8,800 per month drug than they do on a $594, particularly when it's the number one selling single molecule drug on the planet. So basically it is the richest source of revenue from a single drug. So of course they don't want you to buy the cheaper alternative. That's part of the scam, right? And all that is driven by the PBMs that are owned, PBM insurance company combinations.
And I was going to say, like, that's That's the thing, right? Because you're hearing this and you're thinking, well, don't the insurance companies have a strong incentive not to pay that huge bill? But once they've been bought up by the PBMs or once they
Yep.
combined, I mean, and this gets to like what we look at in Congress. I mean, we've passed some legislation out of the committee recently. It's mostly about transparency, and there's a debate over whether you make rebates illegal. The term rebate is so confusing, I think, because it doesn't feels like the wrong word to use. It's like a discount that's supposed to be passed
Kickback.
on.
It's a
It's a
kickback.
kickback.
It's a
Yeah, it's a
kickback.
kick. It's just weird. It's just a weird way to think about it because in the end, you're
But
just
here's the
negotiating
problem.
down a price.
But here's the problem, right? 150 million people have their insurance through their employer. The problem here isn't really the PBM or the / insurance company. It's the employer making really, really bad decisions that aren't
There you
in
go.
the financial or wellness interests of uh, their employees. And I'm as stupid as they are, right? I'll go through the lesson I learned because it'll be a good example for any of CEOs
Mhm.
that happen to be listening to the podcast. So as a CEO of a company, I had 700 employees, 1,000 lives, meaning family and everything, right? And so when we started this, I'm like, okay, I got to eat my own dog food. I got to go in there and figure out all these costs and how it all works. And so the first thing I looked at, I had an employee benefits consultant. They're supposed to be the people that help us figure it out. And they're huge industries, right? That's what most companies use to figure out their healthcare. Well, it turns out these people are charging me $30 per month per employee, $2.1 million a year to push me to one of the big three PBM / insurers. And on top of that, they're getting paid on the back end, right? They're getting commissions on the back end for being pushed. I'm like, how stupid am I? Right. So I cut it, slash, boom, boom, right? Then as this is happening, my son needs an x-ray. And my wife was like, okay, I'm going to take him. I'll take the insurance card, yada, yada. Like, no. I'll call the x-ray place and I want to get a cash price because I'm learning very clearly from Cost Plus that the cash price is always better than the insurance company price. And
Mhm.
so, and since I self-insure, that's the insurance company price is what I was going to have to pay out of pocket. And so, the x-ray, I forget the exact price, $200 some, whatever it was, but the insurance company price, what they were going to charge me to pay as a self-insured company, more than $2,000. And then I had a CT colonoscopy. I'm at that age, right? And did the same pricing, same thing, $2,200 versus $500. I'm like, this is insane. Why am I paying an insurance company? Particularly since I self-insure. So all the expenses are coming to me anyways. So, you think what's insurance for? Insurance is if you can't afford something. Well, I'm like,
Right.
well, I'm paying out of pocket. 2, I have special insurance, right? Reinsurance. So if it's catastrophic, I have a way to cover that separate
Right.
from the quote unquote insurance company. My cost for a family of 5 through my insurance company was $29,000 a year. So, and we had really good insurance, right? I really wanted to get with little copay and little deductible for employees. And I'm like, but that's insane, right? So literally by the end of this year, we'll stop paying our insurance premiums altogether.
Yeah.
Because when I ask the question, what does an insurance company do for me or any company that self-insures? What unique skill they don't. And wait, it gets worse. They put together the insurance company that we had, like all puts together the network, the hospitals you can go to, the surgery centers, et cetera, you can go to. They were charging me an extra $18 per employee per month just to use that network that they put together as part of the insurance premiums I was paying anyway. I'm like, how stupid am I to do this? So
It's and
we're
it's so
transitioning and I recommend, it's insane.
yeah, and it's
Uh,
just really confusing to people because like most people are not CEOs, right? And don't quite, they're like, okay, I got insurance through my job, so that
well,
seems
even the
fine.
CBOs now, that's the problem though, Dan. The CEOs just want to run their companies and they
Right.
always thought they can entrust their employee benefits consultants.
Right.
They can't.
They
They
can't because they're
can't.
on the take.
And
They're in
so
the industry. Yeah.
yes, that therein lies the rub,
Yeah.
right? So now if we really want to change the industry, in your district, bringing in the employers and talking to them and saying, how do you do your insurance? Tell me why you actually have to deal with this insurance company. Because you have decent sized companies in your district, right? There's
Mhm.
no reason why they need to continue to use their insurance companies. But wait, there's more. Then the same thing applies to the PBM. I looked at the PBM and the prices they were charging me. And by the way, in order to get all my claims from them, they charged me to get the claims for my employees. They wouldn't just say, hey, here's the claims. And some of the legislation, transparency legislation you guys are doing says you can't charge for that anymore. But they charged me just to find out what my claims were. And when I looked, they were charging me all the insane prices, like the examples I gave you that were
Mhm.
a multiple of cost plus drugs. You know, I just took a sampling with the MAVs, the company, and it was like over this period, what they charged me for $160,000 would have cost me $19,000 with cost plus drugs. And so the key for us and the effort that I think is going to change healthcare in this country is educating employers that you can't just give it to HR or your CFO and expect
Yeah.
them to work with your employee benefits consultant, because you will be ripped off. 100% guaranteed. If you were self-insured employer with over 200, 300 employees, you are getting ripped off. And if we start taking those steps to disassociate people from traditional insurance, that money can be used for,
Mhm.
I mean, the savings are insane.
So I actually want to clarify for the audience what self-insurance is versus
Sure.
the other. What was the other option? It's
Traditional.
your
Yeah. Traditional.
traditional or
Traditional insurance.
self-insured. So you're saying you're paying you did self-insured in your company, and
Right.
you end up paying $29,000 a year per family of five. So
Yep.
um but then they charge, and then the insurance company still charges you
So here's
for,
what happened.
physician
So let's just say,
visits.
right. So let's just say, Dan works for Mark, or Mark works for Dan, right? And we're a self-insured company. And Dan's son needs to go to, unfortunately, needs to go to the hospital to have some procedure done. The insurance company is already negotiated a set price that's typically a percentage of Medicare, right? So if Medicare is 100%, the price they negotiate is typically 250 to 300% of Medicare.
Mhm.
And then when that happens, they will charge whatever that amount is. Let's just say it's $25,000. They won't pay for that out of pocket because I'm self-insured. They'll send me a bill for that $25,000. So I actually, when it comes to payments, I am the insurance company. That's the definition of self-insured.
Yeah, but why are you paying premiums?
Exactly. I'm paying premiums because my employee consultant told me I should be doing it this way. And oh, by the way, your premiums only went up 3%. Everybody else's went 7%. So, because we got you a sweetheart deal.
It's weird. So your employees don't have deductibles, but you as a company has the entire cost plus I don't understand
Right.
so like what are they even selling you here on a self-insurance program? Because like, okay, you got to pay premiums, but you also got to pay for all the healthcare. So is what they're selling you like, hey, we're organizing it for you? Is that like the
Yes.
sales
Yeah.
pitch?
We got a really cool app. We have a really cool app that anybody can use, which has value, right? But I can pay independently for that. And we're putting together the network. So you've got this hospital system, that hospital system, et cetera. But what
Right.
we're saying by walking away from that is there are companies out there that put together networks for you, and we actually can go and negotiate the pricing. So instead of me paying 2,500, 250% of Medicare for something, I'm paying 100% of Medicare, in some cases less. And instead of having the insurance company do all these denials and require pre-authorizations that every employee that you have hates, well, we're saving so much money. We just trust our doctors. So we're saying, look, hospital, doctor's office, whatever, we'll pay you cash right away,
Mhm.
right? Maybe even up front, but no pre-authorizations. We're going to trust you as our doctor, no denials. And the other side for the hospital is because when companies have copays, and people don't realize this, when you have a copay or the deductible and you go into the hospital, let's just say for the 25,000, your deductible is $5,000. Well, you pay that directly to the hospital. The hospital takes all the receivables risk, right? They take payment risk and they end up writing off 60%, which in turn increases the price of everybody's healthcare. So by walking away from our insurance company, we're saving a boatload of money. We're getting better care without pre-auths, without denials. There's no risk to the hospital. That's why they give us a cheaper price. It's simplified for the hospital. They love it because they're no longer beholden to the insurance company / PBM. And on the bigger macro scheme of things, when people talk about Medicare for all, they talk about how 20 to 30% of the cost of healthcare is administration. The reason why there's so much administration costs is because every year or two, those insurance companies, they renegotiate the contracts with the hospitals. So the hospitals end up having 20, 30 or more % of their employees and all the associated real estate overhead and their payroll costs dealing nothing with administration. By doing it the way we're in the process of doing it for healthcare and what we've done for pharmacy, we're publishing all this. We're going to put it all on the website, be completely transparent. So now companies, once we get through this year, by 2025, companies be able to copy what we did. Hospitals will be more profitable. The cost of care will come down. If, the cost of Medicaid may come down, the cost of Medicare, as we get people out of Medicare Advantage can come down. All of it changes. And if the Democrats want single payer, you don't have to do it for everybody. But now if it's transparent, we know what it would cost the state of Texas to provide these services for people who are at 200% of the federal poverty level, whatever, right? Just by introducing transparency and disconnecting from the traditional insurance / PBM approach.
So what's an example of one of these companies that you're going to basically contract with? Because if you're a big company and you want to disassociate yourself from an insurance company like you're doing, it seems like you have two options. You either hire a bunch of people, create like a new office within your own company to sort of manage that. That seems like a lot of work, but you're going to contract that out. There's other companies that do that. Like, give me an example.
Right. There's a company called BevCap that does a lot of it. But the reality is, I think you're going to see a transition for companies that have healthcare expenses have gotten so expensive that it makes economic sense to hire a healthcare CFO, if you will.
Yeah.
That only pays attention to your healthcare costs. You can save zillions, right? Depending on the size of your company.
Yeah.
And to manage all that.
And that was my next question. Like, what about smaller companies? Like, what do you think their best option is?
It's tougher right now for companies with 100 or fewer employees. We don't have a great solution for them right now. It's still expensive using the ACA. It's still expensive to self-insure. But if you can get catastrophic insurance and look at the amount you're paying in premiums and what you think your claims will be. So if you have a younger company, right, then you could probably take the chance and self-insure with 100 employees, right? Because you're going to have less instances of care. If you've got a company that skews older, the insurance companies are probably going to get you, right? There's not a whole lot of ways out yet. But the reality is, if we convince the biggest companies in Dallas, Houston to stop using traditional insurance and PBMs, they would have to change their business models dramatically. Otherwise, they'd be gone. And I think that is, let me just tell you something, Dan. Of all the industries I've disrupted in the past, this has been the easiest.
That's good. I mean, because nobody else can figure out how to fix this problem. I mean, we don't know. I mean, there's not good consensus on exactly. We all kind of agree that the payment systems are screwed up. There's not great consensus on how to unscrew that up. Transparency is the first step.
Because you can't legislatively. You can't do it legislatively. That's the problem.
Well, we can force transparency legislatively, which is what we're doing.
What won't even matter. Won't even matter because the insurance company / PBMs will still obfuscate all the little details, right? They're still going to say you can't share anything in the contracts. They're still going to, hey, we'll rebate this and rebate that. They'll still say our medical loss ratios are too high, like you're hearing now with Medicare Advantage, and CMS can't cut this cost or that cost. what's going to change it is companies acting in their souls, just asking a simple question. What is it that my insurance company actually does for me? And can I
Yeah.
do it somewhere else far less expensively? What is it that the PBM does for me? They don't do anything for you. They make it worse.
One of the things I talk about a lot, we presented it at our healthcare innovation summits. We do one every year. That's something I was going to mention to you later. Is direct primary care. So it's very very similar
Uh-huh.
to business model what you're talking about. There's a pretty strong direct
Sure.
primary care market in the Houston area,
For
and
sure.
one
Yeah.
of my doctor he's a direct primary. They run a company that's a direct primary care company, so they contract with you as an individual. You can sign up, and you're talking like a $75 a month subscription.
Yeah,
It's like a
sure.
subscription,
Same
like a
thing.
cell phone bill.
Same thing.
But what it does is it gives you total access to primary care. Now, that's not insurance, right? It's not a broken leg. It's not going to work. But it's like, hey, something's wrong. Instead of going to the emergency room, let me go see my doctor, and I don't have to worry about an
Yeah, for
extra
sure.
payment, right? Because you've just got that, and they
No,
contract with
it's
bigger
exactly right.
companies too, and
Yeah.
then every employee
Yeah, it's
has
the same
that
concept.
doctor. Yeah,
Yeah, it's the same concept, right? The only difference is like with us, we're including primary care in our solution, and we'll contract with multiple primary care options. We'll negotiate the
hmm
price, but the difference is we'll guarantee that $75 a month so that the primary care doctor knows it's going
right,
to be paid for all of our employees. So instead of 75, it'll be 50 because
right.
they know exactly what they're getting. And what we'll do, Dan, is all the negotiations we're doing, a prerequisite is that it has to be transparent. We have to be
hmm
able to publish it so that on our website, costplusdrugs.com, once we get there, we're not there yet on the healthcare side. We're not charging you anything. We're not turning this into a business. I just want to screw up the healthcare system and say, look what I did, but we'll publish all that so that any employer anywhere in the country can replicate it.
So, how does somebody sign up for Cost Plus Drugs? Does can it be like a
Simple.
one-off? So, or is it like
Yeah.
that's your
Yeah.
pharmacy from now
No,
on? I mean, how does it?
it can be one off, however you wanted to use us. You go to
Yeah,
costplusdrugs.com, you just sign up, create an account. If there's a medication that you're looking for a prescription for right now, you see if we carry it. If we carry it, it'll show you a page to show your doctor. It's on your phone, or you can
yep,
print it out or whatever, or they know there's other ways they know. And then your doctor sends in the prescription, you put in the credit card, and it shows up at your doorstep. And you use
right,
us once, you use us every month, use us 100 times. It doesn't matter. It's up to you.
yeah. That
There's
does
no
seem
fees. There's no club. There's nothing. Strongly encouraged. Let me make one other point on that, right? Even if you already have insurance, you probably have a deductible. You probably have a copay or co-insurance. There is a 90% chance that our price is cheaper than your copay. Like during the donut of Medicare, particularly this year still, we have a bunch of Medicare users because we're cheaper than their copay.
right. Yeah, I mean, and so what's the next step? So, like, I mean, if we're looking at this sort of normalizing the market in healthcare, making it more of a market-based system, and healthcare is interesting in that way because you can't totally just make it a free market because everybody needs it. So by definition, it can't be totally free market. But at
No,
the same time,
I
you have to
disagree.
have
I disagree.
well,
I,
let me
I
finish my
disagree.
thought. Let me finish my thought. I
Okay,
mean, but
go
at the
ahead.
same time, you need market forces in order to create competition,
Right,
reduce prices, and increase
right,
quality. And so you have to have that mix, right? But it's kind of like there are things just as a policymaker, like I view things as stuff we need and stuff we want. And so you need water, okay? You need energy,
right.
and you need healthcare. We already decided by law that you need healthcare because if you show up in an
Yeah,
emergency room, like they have to take
they
care of
have
you.
to.
So
They have to. Right,
that's
exactly.
already in law. And so, we've got these two different, extremes. One would be just like it's totally free market, but then that does leave some people out, so you can't totally do that to the extreme. And on the other hand, you can't totally make it single payer because then you eliminate those market forces that are what create the innovation
Right,
and create the competition and increase in qualities.
right. So we agree and we disagree in that I believe healthcare is a right. that we should take care of everybody. The question is, how do we get there? And the way we get there is the transparency and educating, like for your conference, right? It's not about bringing people in who are in the healthcare industry. It's about bringing employers in who are not in the healthcare industry and educating them on how to better negotiate on what all their options are. And
Right.
once we start doing that and we're transparent about it, then the price goes down. Then the only question isn't, the market forces take over, and where the state wants to pay for the emergency care with payments, or just pay directly because, hey, it's all transparent. So we know what it costs to get an x-ray for all these. And so the state's just going to deal with, do you want to deduct it all to impact overuse, right? That's just a policy decision. So I think we can get there, like I said before, where it's not single payer by definition, but those people who are in need, if the state knows what all the prices are and they know what they can afford and what they're able to pay, you can take care of the people who need it.
Yeah, well, I mean, the state's always going to have a role. It's like, we agree and disagree, but we really just disagree on the wording. So I don't think healthcare is a right.
Yeah.
But that's just a definition. I think it's a need. So we're saying the same thing. I just don't use the word right, because if I use the word right, and
right,
I'm
there's a consideration.
I'm a political philosopher here. So when I say right, it means you absolutely, it means that I have to conscript a doctor and make them do something for you. That's what it means. And so I say it's a need that we, that's why I don't like to say it's a right.
Enough.
Because,
fair enough. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Because you don't have a right to somebody else's services or actions. But
we
have a need,
right.
But we have a need for it. And so we got to figure out that need. And it seems to me like, I love what you're doing here. And you combine that with the movement and direct primary care, and this kind of decoupling from this totally non-transparent insurance PBM nonsense. You start paying in cash, and you still need some form of catastrophic insurance. And I think the real thing we've got to go, and we had a healthy market for this prior to the ACA with high risk pools and reinsurance. And, that's where the government steps in, like as a reinsurance program for stuff that's just so far out of the normal costs, like
the catastrophic stuff. Yeah.
Really catastrophic stuff. And there's got to be those three buckets. It's like primary care is one bucket. Your second bucket is like, a little worse than primary care. It's like a broken leg, right? But you're not, it's not 10 years of treatment. It's treatable. And then you've got your catastrophic stuff that's like just in the millions, we don't want to do triage like they do in the UK, where, where everybody's reading that story of the poor little baby that they couldn't save, and they wouldn't even let them leave. I really know exactly what the details of that story are, but that's not what we want.
It's not what we want. Yeah.
And Canada says it's a right in their constitution, but it doesn't mean they deliver it, like Canadians come here.
Canadians asking us for medications all the time. People, they want to buy, Canadians want to buy generic drugs from us because we're cheaper.
Yeah. That's amazing. Cause that's like kind of the first, we had some states, like I think Florida, like wanted to be able to buy from Canada, but now you're turning that on its head. So I love to hear it. And I tell people, because people will criticize our healthcare system, and they're like, well, why are Americans going to Mexico? And I'm like, it's not for the quality of care. It's because they can buy that one specific thing cheaper, so, but you don't want to be all the time in Mexico. Trust me, because you've heard of the stories of people at a hospital in Mexico, like they'll like refuse treatment if you don't pay them right now. Like it's a whole thing. But there are some things, just maybe because it's black market, who knows, but it's just cheaper. But I'm like, but if you have a rare cancer, you're not going to Mexico or Canada or the UK or anywhere.
They're coming here. They're coming here.
And specifically, you're coming to Houston. That's where you're coming. So we don't want to lose that amazing, qualitative edge that we've got. And that's why I say, like, you've got to combine the humanitarian need for healthcare with the market principles. And we can fix this, but we're not doing much to fix it in Congress. So I always appreciate innovators doing it.
But you don't have to. That's the whole thing, right? And look, the one thing I think Congress needs to do, as it applies to the higher cost treatments, right? The hemophilia drug. that costs $3.4 million. That needs to be a direct negotiation on a next Netflix model where you go to the manufacturer and say, we will cover your nut for the entire cost of the drugs. So you can't lose money no matter what, right? But in exchange for that, for all the Medicare and Medicaid users, this is the only price we pay and they get open access, just like an all-you-can-eat Netflix model. But that's where the negotiation needs to happen, because for those rare drugs that cost a lot of money, the reason they cost a lot of money, other than some of the service requirements and things associated with that, sorry against turbulence here. But other than that, it's because it's so expensive to create, right? They have to get their nut back. They have to meet their revenue requirements. So the government should be negotiating for those really, you go to them and you say, look, I want you to be transparent with me. If it costs you $3 billion to create this drug over a course of 10 years, we'll pay you $3 billion. But all the needs for CMS, for Medicaid and Medicare, we're not paying you. And if we have one user that needs it, fine. If we have 10,000 that need it, fine too. It's just a flat fee every year that you get paid for these range of drugs. That way, we know you're not losing money. That way, we know you can continue to invest in new drugs. And that way, you have also an approach. So when the next expensive drug comes along, it's not going to be nearly as expensive because you know we're going to make it so that you're not going to lose money on it.
That's
and we do
interesting.
that in investing a lot, right? Or I do that with companies a lot.
So your proposal would be, because
we're going to make it so you.
So the current, like the new law, which, I'm of course not a fan of, it kind of holds a gun to the manufacturer's head. It said if you don't take the price we're giving you, you get a 95% tax on your revenue. I mean, it's a pretty extreme negotiation. It's not a negotiation
it's onerous,
at all. And so that's interesting. So your proposal would be the government agrees to, get a fair assessment of what it costs to develop the drug and literally just pay that upfront cost and then get a whatever renegotiated price.
Unlimited.
On that.
We're not even a negotiated price for the government needs, right? For Medicaid and Medicare, it's all you can eat. We make sure that you're not losing money.
Mm-hmm.
And in exchange, you cover all of our needs. Now, for all those drugs, those therapeutic drugs, there's hospital costs and other things that the insurance company or the corporation or the individual would have to pay out of pocket, right? But that's just an out-of-pocket cost. But it would be an all-you-can-eat model. That way, there's no excuse. Because there are maybe 100 of those types of drugs right now. That number is going to grow into the thousands, right? And so the cures are going to be insanely important. And just keep on getting better and better and better. But if we don't have a model, no one can afford all that stuff except the U.S. government.
Well, and that's why I hate this new law, because every analysis of it says, look, there's going to be less investment. There's going to be less risk taking. But here's what the manufacturers will do. They're still going to invest, but they're going to invest in really, really safe bets. They're not going to invest in the really risky stuff. Because they're not
I don't think they can discern one from the other. I don't think they can discern one from the other. Seriously.
What do you mean?
If they meaning knowing what's risky and what's not, they're all risky, right? Now they might buy more that's already been through trials, right? As acquire more as opposed to create more. So some may change and already have changed their business models prior to the IRA, where they say, you know what, we're not going to be in the development mode. We're just going to be in the acquisition mode.
Yeah, they've been doing that for a long time. Sure. I mean, all the real innovation comes from these like biotech startups. But again, like those biotech startups still need investors. And if you're not, it still goes back to the same problem.
Yeah, I just don't think, I get your point though, right? And we're not so far apart, right? You never want to diminish innovation ever. But at the same time, I don't, when I talk to the manufacturers as it relates to the IRA, they don't like the process, but they understand it. But the reason that process is there is because all the things we just mentioned, because the insurance companies / PBMs are ripping off the manufacturers as much as they're ripping off patients.
Yeah.
That's a big part of the problem. So they're paying the bill for the way the PBMs and insurance companies. It's just like, they've turned these manufacturers, they've demonized them. The
Right.
manufacturers have got so
Yes.
demonized by the PBMs. It's insane, right?
And that's where this law came from, basically, because it's because of that dynamic. It's like, I think it attacks the manufacturers unfairly. You talk about Big Pharma, and I'm like, I don't know. I mean,
Agree.
are
Agree,
they
100%.
unethical sometimes? Yes, there's plenty of cases where there's clearly unethical. And so,
Mostly
my
with
worry
patents,
is,
right?
yeah. And, we know the games, and that's like, again, legislatively, maybe that's some things we've looked at. Like, you need to make it easier and more fair to create the generic drug. Once that patent life has ended, because what they'll
Right.
do is they'll basically change a molecule here and there. Like, we know the
Right.
game.
They'll evergreen it. Yeah. They'll evergreen it. Yeah.
And then it'll be another extension of the patent. So it's not like they're angels, all right.
Right. For sure.
But at the same time, like, what I worry about is, look, in the end, you have a choice with what to do with your research money, and you could do it on this really risky, but maybe really beneficial, like Alzheimer's treatment, or you could do it on something like, I know I'm going to make money on this, people are still going to want it, and that's probably what they're going to choose. With when faced with like this sort of potential to have a really bad negotiation, and that's the thing. There's a lot of discretion to the Secretary of Health and Human Services
Right.
on this law. There's a ton of discretion. So, if it's implemented super fairly, then we won't see really bad consequences.
Agree.
But we don't know,
Right.
Let's go back to these biotech companies, because it's kind of what I do
Sure.
with my healthcare innovation summit. I think you would think it's pretty cool. We've done like 5 years now in a row. This last one, we did it at the, right in the middle of Texas Medical Center in their new big building. And it was great. And what I do is I take, somebody who's doing something innovative, and we've got like, maybe it's a drug treatment, maybe it's like the psychedelics treatment. Maybe it's, our first one was with a really young CEO from Intuitap, and she made this like just basically a sensor device that makes it much more accurate when you're doing like an epidural. She finally
That's
got
cool.
FDA approval after years, like yesterday. She's a good friend of mine, so we're happy about that. But that's how crazy the
Tell her
FDA
I said
process
congratulations.
is. So
Yeah, that's another thing. But yeah, tell her I said congrats.
I will. She'll be happy to hear that. And Mark Cuban says congrats. So I run it kind of like a TED Talk. I try to interview the people for like 15 minutes, like, hey, tell us what the cool thing is, yada yada. I really want to turn it into like more of a Shark Tank, though, because I would love investors to be coming to this thing and seeing these like new up and coming startups, and like create like a conference. I don't know if there's anything like this already, and like bring the money to the smart people. I've got the smart people, but I need to bring the money to the smart people, and like, see where you want to invest. And I don't know, you might know a thing or two about Shark Tank.
Yeah, for a while. So what I would suggest is the hard part there. So if I just walk in the door, am I qualified to make those kind of investments, right? And do I have the equity, enough money to make, because those things aren't cheap and they take 10 years, right? As you saw with your friend, just to go through the whole approval process. So you have to get the right investors first. But what I would suggest is you create a website where you have them publish all the white papers. And then as you go around and you talk to potential investors, you introduce them to the website and let them read up on it with the contacts associated with them. Because if I'm looking at as an investor, I'm like, tell me all the details, right? And if I'm a biotech investor, I've got someone who knows the science, knows the AI, all the da-da-da-da-da, and has to make sure that what they're saying is real. Because now with AI in particular, there's so much nonsense, right? Where AI is going to do this and AI is going to do that, and what's real and what's not is hard to discern. But if you create a website, just off of Dan Crenshaw, whatever it may be, and every year have people publish their white papers, and you bring in, and then in a newsletter or whatever, you can partner with, or you can reach out to a bunch of biotech investors and just say, go to this website, tell me what you think, and I'm happy to introduce you if they like it.
Yeah, that's
Because
interesting.
it's
So
just it's way too technical.
There's no one-stop shop right now. Like an investor's like, I want to invest in biotech. There's no one-stop shop to be like, okay, what are all the people
Not that
doing?
I know of, right? But I'm not a biotech guy. Yeah. I'm not a biotech guy. And there's places where you can look for investments and stuff like that. But if that's your thing, right, and that's your conference, then when it comes down to it, you can have the the interested investors interview the biotech founders so everybody can learn the whole process.
Yeah, and that's where the kind of the Shark Tank comes in, and you got to make it a little entertaining, right? That's how I get people there, and
right,
that's how
of
you
course,
create
of course,
excitement about it.
right.
All right, maybe we'll ask you to be one of those interviewers if you don't mind.
I don't know if I'm qualified, but if it's stuff I know, no, I don't mind. I can help you either way.
It would be great. So I don't know how much time. I think we're running. Yeah, we're running on our hour. I just wanted to ask you because we were talking about this earlier. I made the comment. Glad you're not flying United, although I fly United all the time.
Before
I
we
don't
get
have a
there,
choice.
I was gonna say I just want to do my little sales pitch because I'm always telling if any medication you take, go to costplusdrugs.com, put in the name of the medication. We carry 2,500, and if we do, just compare your prices. Chances are it's cheaper than your copay insurance, your deductible. We can save you money. Just give it a shot. And if it works for you, just spread the word because we spend no money on advertising, zero money on marketing, and we've got millions of customers all by word of mouth. So there's my sales. Okay, United.
Okay,
Let's go.
Yeah. Well, now I have one more question on the healthcare actually. So
Sure.
is there a more perfect way to create an insurance company? And do they exist right
Yes.
now? And so
Yes.
what
Yes.
would that be?
The way to do it is on a fee for service basis for everything that comes with the insurance company, other than the actual insurance itself. And on the insurance itself, dealing with somebody who doesn't offer with any of the ancillary services, right? They just deal with the economic side. And that's the harder part right now. So I didn't explain that well. If you're a self-insured company, then you want to deal with a company that only does the services side. They don't do the actual insurance because as a self-insured company, you do the insurance yourself. You don't need
You're
that
paying it
side,
anyway.
right?
Yeah.
If you're a small startup or whatever, and you're looking at the ACA versus winging it and just hoping it all works out, there's not
Yeah.
really a good solution right now. Is that an
Yeah.
opportunity? To be determined.
Yeah. I'm not sure what it looks like. United. So, we were talking about it earlier.
Yep.
I don't know. I don't know if you watched my viral video I did after,
Yeah, I did.
did you watch the whole thing? So it's, what blows me away
With the babies and everything and everybody come up. Yeah.
yeah. Well, what blew me away was their reaction to it. And that's kind of wanted to get your take on from the CEO perspective. Cause from my perspective, I'm like, you guys had every opportunity to just make me go away. You could have apologized. You could have said she did something wrong. I have it on video. You didn't think I could get the video, but I did get the video. Their executive team was nice. They usually are. And they sent me to that guy, Philip Griffith, who's the VP of United here in Houston. And that's when, I recorded that conversation. You see that in the video. And that guy was at war with me from the very first second. And I have it all on tape. It's like there's no disputing it. And they're like, release the whole tape. I'm like, I gave the whole tape to United because I was like, hey guys, this is how he treated me. I'm not trying to act special here. Like your lady grabbed our dog, grabbed our property. Like there's probably a criminal element to that, which we're going to be looking into because I have no other choices at this point. And as they're leaving, like these aren't ticketed passengers anymore. Like they're leaving the airport.
Right.
It was just wild. And like, so I guess the question from the CEO perspective is like, what goes on? Because I see this all the time. Corporations making what seems to the common person, like really dumb decisions with respect to public relations. And you mentioned it's because of just like who they hire. And it's like, they just do what their lawyers tell them. And their lawyers say, play tough, don't talk to them, don't say anything. And it's like, that's not common sense. You could have easily just talked to me.
No.
Like weird.
Yeah. And that's the key, right? Depending on the size of the company, look, if you have 100,000 employees, that's not a company I've ever run. And just the law of big numbers says you're going to have a lot of idiots, right?
Mhm.
And those idiots are going to do idiotic things, even at the management level, right? So probably the people at the very top were the ones that were nice to you. They sent you to somebody else because we don't want to see it happen again, Dan. And Congressman Crenshaw, we want to treat you right. And we're sending you to our guy in Houston. And that guy in Houston turns out to be, not the right guy. So I understand that happens. But when you know that it's happening, right, that's where it's got to get to the PR person. It just calls and says, I'm sorry, right? What can we do to make it right? And particularly in the airline world, because, airline miles are not only fungible, they're expirable, right? They're gone. When they're gone, they're gone. And so they could have just given you all the airline miles in the world to travel for the next year, and you would have been thrilled.
He could have sat me down and told me, I can't believe this happened. We're gonna do some extra training
Yeah,
on her, and
just
I
be
would have been
nice.
like, all right, I guess that's okay. That's what would have happened. But
Yeah,
instead, he tells me, he tells me,
what did you?
well, I mean, he
Yeah,
goes,
just crazy
he
shit.
literally started off the conversation. He's like, I deal with people like you and your wife and customers like you every day, so let's go.
Oh my
That's
God.
that's literally
Yeah,
how it
that's just
started. And then he lied about that. He said your wife was handsy and agitated from the very start. I'm like, okay, well, let's watch the video. Now, United's video was really good because it was like a perfect picture of it.
right.
They destroyed it. They never gave it to me. I got the security footage from the airport. And their video, and I'm like watching it with him. I believe he said he'd watched it, but I'm like, there's no way you watched this. Because there's no way you would describe my wife that way after watching this video where she's not like me, right? Like I'm more aggressive. She is like, okay, like I guess this is what we're like. And then they try to leave with her infant. And I'm like, it's right there in the video. You can't, and they just kick me out and like,
It's just insane.
and then they lawyer up. And I'm like, holy crap, guys. As well. So now we're looking at legislation because
No,
like
that's
I
insane,
really
right?
think there should be passenger rights. You should have the ability to, because not everybody has my platform. Not everybody can just go to war. And even I get
I understand. I know how
consequences.
that goes. Yeah.
They downgraded my status this week. Like they just downgraded it, because
That's
that's
insane.
they just
That's insane.
like, yeah. I'm just like,
Look, every company has bad employees, but the one rule that I try to use, and it doesn't always work, just be nice. Just
yeah,
be nice. Nicest looks from a macro perspective, what we're losing in business today is trust. That's why cost plus drugs work so well, because nobody trusts anybody in the healthcare system at all other than their doctor.
yeah,
And that's happening across the entire country with businesses everywhere where nobody trusts anybody. And the easiest way to gain trust is just be transparent, honest, and nice. And if you do that, and that's what I try to tell people, our employees, everybody's, if you do those things, chances are it's going to work out. And the times it doesn't, it's probably the other person, not the employee, that's creating the problem intentionally. Like we've all worked with lawyers like that, I've been, I'm the deep pocket. So I got to deal with deep pocket syndrome, right? Where I got people
yeah,
who don't want to be nice to me. And so, but just for our employees, and I say it all the time, just be nice. Listen, be transparent, be honest, and be nice. Because if you can't be honest, that's a symptom of a much bigger problem, right? Because if you have to
yeah,
hide something and there's somebody downline from you, but and then the other thing I found with big companies in particular, is they're too MBA-ish, right? They want to do things, they have a PR person for this, they have a lawyer for that, and there's somebody who's assigned to do this. No, if you have to assign things to various people based off of what happened, you've already lost, because those people are just going to just try to do their job for the sake of doing their job, and it never works.
right. Yeah. And they have a very cookie cutter approach, which is like, be strong, make it go away, admit no guilt. Or at least that's the very toxic mentality at United. And it's like, I think they're held hostage too by the unionization of their employees. So they can't actually take any action, but you don't have to take any action. You could have just been nice. It was just such a
Sure.
wild experience. And it went so viral because I think people relate to it. Because everybody gets
Oh
treated
yeah, for sure.
like crap every once in a while, and you have no recourse. And so, you know what? Now we're going to be looking at legislation that provides passengers recourse. Maybe they should wear body cams. Maybe agents should wear body cams. So, like if the passenger was terrible, it'll be on video. Because the problem is airlines have an ability to really change the economy. I mean, if you can't fly, like that's a real problem. And you
No,
don't have
transportation, yeah, it's cheap.
and there's not competition on routes. It's like I would love to boycott United. I cannot. It's impossible for me because I live in
Yeah,
Houston.
yeah,
And so it is what
yeah.
it is. And that's, so there's something wrong with that system too, about the way that they've been able to monopolize routes. How we change that, I do not know, but we're going to try and figure it out. Had a lot of lot of members from all spectrums and senators come to me and be like, let's do this. This is a popular issue. It doesn't matter where you are. It's a popular issue.
There's no downside, but from a legislative perspective, but and it's also a security issue, right? Because if you're messing with people that there's no reason to mess with them, then you're not paying attention to something else, right? And you're diverted from something else. And maybe you do it like they do with email, whatever, where there's a specific process from which you can get access to all the video that they have that they've recorded. Right.
That's coming.
Right. Just because once they know that, that'll change their behavior.
Right. And if I had the voice recording, if I had the audio from what my wife went through, it would blow people's minds. Because
there'll be AI, right? Once the AI will be able to read those lips, read your wife's lips and everybody else's lips easily. So you don't even need to have the body cams at that expense. You just need to be able to see their face and it'll be easy to read.
Well, I want them to have the expense of the body cams, so they're gonna wear them. we're gonna get that through. All of this because all they had to do is be nice. All they had to do is be nice. All right, I've kept you long enough, Mark.
Yep.
It's been a pleasure. It really exciting to hear about this kind of new structure of healthcare.
For sure.
It's so simple, right? It's just transparency in pricing. Fixes so much. It fixes so much in a broken market. And I know that's what we're trying to do in Congress is force that transparency, and companies like yours doing it. It's great. So appreciate you being on.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed it, Dan. Thank you.